This is Titan 007. Picture this. A glass-bottom pool, 30 stories up. A diver slices through the water, and the pane beneath him begins to crack. Sydney skyline, tropical cliffside, impossible height and none of it is where you think it is. Today, how a modestly reviewed sequel, Mechanic, Resurrection, quietly became a global win. On screen we're in Sydney. In reality, that jaw-drop pool hit was stitched from multiple places. Rooftop plates in Australia, heavy green screen work, and a cliffside villa in Phuket, Thailand, where the sea looks like it runs straight into infinity. The skyline was composited. The danger was meticulously engineered. It's the perfect example of modern action filmmaking, where location is equal parts, travel and typography, and the magic lies in the seam. Mechanic. Resurrection arrived in 2016 as the glossy sequel to the 2011 remake of The Mechanic, which itself traced back to the 1972 Charles Bronson original. This time, German director Dennis Gunselbest, known for The Wave Took the Wheel, he stepped into a franchise built on the competence fantasy. Arthur Bishop, played by Jason Statham, doesn't just eliminate targets. He solves problems like an engineer. The rhythm is procedural measure. Test, execute, hand. The movie leans into that melody. The writing team Philip Shelby and Tony Mosher. From a story by Shelby and Brian Pittman lays out 3 impossible jobs. Cinematographer Daniel Gottschalk frames clean lines and saturated tropics. Editors Uli Crisson, Michael Houghton-Dute, and Toddy Miller give each kill its own tempo. The result is a film that feels like a blueprint you can watch. Humid blues for Southeast Asia, corporate neutrals for Australia, wind-scored grays for Bulgaria. If the geography is sometimes invented, the spatial thinking stays consistent. On paper, the story is simple. A retired hitman is forced back into the life to execute accidents on cue. In practice, it's also a passport. Filming spanned Thailand, Bulgaria, Malaysia, Brazil, and Australia. Some places play themselves, others stand in for far-flung fantasies. An abandoned prison in eastern Thailand becomes a high-security island lockup through digital work. A Phuket villa becomes a Sydney penthouse. Bulgaria mountains host a villain's lair that looks as if it grew out of the sea. That lair is real, and nowhere near the water. It's the Busladza Monumentan, enormous, abandoned Communistira Hall. Perched on a peak in Bulgaria's Balkan range. On screen, it's reimagined as a cliffside stronghold with a helipad and submarine access. In life, there's no shoreline, only wind and alpine grass. The camera turns a ruin into a symbol, part utopia, part ghost ship. Cinema has always plundered ruins for meaning. In the visual effects era, the plunder is almost polite, restoring and relocating them for the needs of plot. Now, about that pool, the impossible sequence is less about physics than logistics. Australian plates, for context, Thai plates, and digital models for the pool and villa, compositing to reconcile sun angles, reflections, and water behavior. The effect works because of one tactile detail. Glass that fails with a believable crack pattern and a timed delay. Its spectacle is materials science. When the pane gives way, you feel the gravity even though you know it's a collage. If critics were cool to the movie, it's usually because of plausibility. Bishop always has the right tools at the right port at the right time, and a closet full of chemistry to turn into a demolition lab. The franchise's contract with the audience is clear. The pleasure of watching a professional do impossible things as if they re-routine. The consensus landed on a handful of entertaining set pieces. Then audiences, especially overseas, voted for those set pieces with tickets. At home, the film opened modestly and finished with just over $20 million in the US abroad. It took off. On a reported $40 million budget, Mechanic, Resurrection grossed around $125 million worldwide, and China became its largest territory, contributing roughly half of the international total. In 2016, China's theatrical market was a decisive swing factor for mid-tier action that traveled well. Sturdy stunts, clear goals, minimal culture-specific humor. The movie was engineered to speak that visual Esperanto, The domestic cinema score came in at a B+, a signal of solid word of mouth, if not rapture. In the ledger of 2010's Statham vehicles, this made it one of his biggest solo wins, by some measures. Not because of North America, but because the international model now guarantees a floor for muscular, R-rated programmers. The arithmetic is straightforward. Roughly 40 million in, roughly 125 million out. Risk spread across multiple territories, anchored by a star whose brand promises competence as much as charisma, and that star matters. Statham's minimalism economy of movement, economy of dialogue tethers. A film that might otherwise float away on aerials and architecture. Jessica Alba's Gina gives the villain leverage. Tommy Lee Jones plays arms dealer Max Adams, with sly eccentricity round tinted glasses, earrings. Soul patch-like, he wandered in from a different movie and decided to have fun. Michelle Yeoh, as a Thai resort owner and old friend, adds grace to the metal and glass palette. The performances tracked archetype, as they must. But the weight on screen, the foot slipping into a ladder cuff, the shoulder against the door remains Statham's domain. The opening logos tell their own business story. Alongside Lionsgate, UC Summit Premiere, Millennium Films, Davis Films, Charter Winkler Productions. A familiar consortium for action shot in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. These are companies fluent in tax incentives and service studios. Nobojana in Sophia Cruz in Thailand. To make 40 million look like more. Even the acknowledgements for the pool sequence nod to real places. Paressa Resort and Villa Amanzi, whose aesthetic capital becomes part of the movie's value. Behind the scenes, that middle budget is the point. In a landscape where superhero epics crowd the top and micro-budget horror multiplies at the bottom. The 30-2-60- million action picture is an endangered species that survives by being clever. The craft must show, and the money must show, but neither can announce itself as hence the careful choice of real surfaces that read as expensive. A villa that looks like a billionaire essay, a monument that looks like a supervillain's lair, stitched together with digital finesse. Step back, and the movie becomes a case study in the new mechanics of global action. Locations are half real, half virtual. Sets are borrowed, not built. National borders are production design options. The audience contract has shifted to, you don't have to believe a man crossed 3 time zones overnight. You have to feel the pain give under pressure. You don't have to know where the plates were shot. You have to see the lines meet cleanly in the final composite. By late fall of its release year, trade coverage was noting the asymmetry. Some big American action titles underperformed in China, while Mechanic Resurrection held strong. Part of that is structural. Certain properties are deeply American in theme. They travel with context baggage. Mechanic travels light, water, glass, height, pressure set, plot, break. The universals are visual, and the editing respects that grammar. There's also the Statham factor. In interviews he talks about action. You can feel stunts that read as stunts. A sense of risk, even when you know how movies are made. That insistence pays off on screen. The film uses visual effects to orchestrate danger, but the last 2% of believability comes from a physical performer who moves like he knows the cost of a missed step. So what is Mechanic Resurrection? Really, not a revelation, but an honest statement of purpose. Deliver 3 spectacular jobs. Tie them to a romance imperative. Exit clean. Cancel at set pieces breathe, while keeping the connective tissue brisk. If the plotting feels schematic, the images carry their own logic. Water against glass, steel against sky, wind against concrete. It's cinema as mechanism, the pleasure machine in plain view. Which brings us back to the pool. The trick isn't the kill. It's the crowd of artisans required to make the Imadiva visual effects team aligning reflections and shadows the camera. Crew balancing parallax between villa and skyline, the location managers negotiating rooftops and resorts, the editors counting beats to the first crack. That sequence is a thesis on how global filmmaking works now. When the pain finally gives way, you don't need to know what's real and what's digital. You just need to feel gravity. Stand on the cliff in Phuket, and you can look through Villa Amanzi pool into the Andaman Sea. Untouched by cinema, hike to the Buzaladza monument and you'll find wind and mosaic and rust. No ocean in sight. On film, they become a penthouse and a lair. The transformation is the point. For a mid-budget sequel that critics approached with suspicion, those transformations of places, of markets, of expectations add up to a quiet success. That's the lesson of Mechanic, Resurrection. In the global era, where you make a movie can be as important as how you shoot it, and the line between the two is where the craft lives. I'm Titan 007. No hype, no fluff. Just the mechanics. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more deep dives into how movies really work.